All right, today we have the Nikon FE. Definitely not a fan of Nikon here, mostly just because I don't have any Nikon stuff, so I do have a bias towards it. It's a good camera system, if not a little bit expensive, but let's break into it. So first off, this is the FE model, and essentially that means that this is Nikon F electronic. So there was the FM, which was the original version of this technically, and all of that was mechanical. This was the updated version. This is all electrical. So you can tell the difference because right here it says FE, and then in an FM it will say FM. The other thing you'll notice is that it has this little switch here, which is the battery check. This takes two LR44 button cell batteries in the bottom here, and when you put them in there, you want to make sure that the battery works. And just by pushing that down, and a little LED will light up. So while we're looking at the bottom here, you have your 4 contacts for the power winder. You have your film rewind button there, so you push that and you're able to rewind your film. So let's get back to the top here. You have your shutter speed selector here, you have your ASA dial here, and your exposure compensation. The exposure compensation is just lift up on the little ring here and move that little red dot around. Let's put it back to 0 for now. And then for the ASA, there's a button right there. You push that and slide that around accordingly. Let's put that back to 100. The shutter speed. This one's kind of interesting because, as you notice, there is a B and there's an M90. What does that mean? Well, B is bulb, obviously. M90 is mechanical 90. And that means that the mechanical speed of this camera, what it will fire on if you don't have any power to it, is 1/90th of a second. Say for instance your battery dies, you can still fire it on bulb, or 1/90th of a second. Then you have anywhere from 8 seconds, an 8-second exposure, all the way to 1,000, 1/1000th of a second. And then you have an auto setting as well. The other thing is when you click it onto auto, there's a button that pops up here, like the ME Super kind of. You push down on that and then you're able to move it out. But if you push it there, it locks into place. So you need to push that down to move it to a different speed. The flash sync speed is 1/125th of a second. And then on the viewfinder here, if you use, I believe, a corresponding flash, there's a little red light, and that will light up when your flash is charged. That way, if you're looking down the viewfinder, you don't have to try and listen to the flash, like the capacitors and the flash winding up. You can just see that this little red light will pop on and you can take the picture. This was like billed as the professional camera. So you'll notice like a lot of them online pretty dinged up. They've been dropped around and stuff, and they've been definitely used and abused, so to say, but they're still pretty good. It's a solid build, so for the most part they will continue to work. Then over here you have a double exposure lever, so you push that forward and that will hold the sprocket in place so you can advance the shutter mechanism but not advance the film. So that's kind of helpful to have. Here's your shutter button there, and then this locks the lever into place and you pull it out here and then you're able to move it. So advanced lever is a pretty good design. On the front here you have a stop down lever there, and then you have a self timer, and that's just initiated when you advance and fire. It will move. Interesting thing about Nikons is that the mirror will go up when the self timer's running. Most cameras, the mirror stays down, but that's just something to keep in mind. Yeah, and then you have your lens release button here. I do not have any Nikon lenses, but the very important thing to know is that Nikon is the exact opposite of every other camera. So for instance, we have my ME Super right here. Push the button down, counterclockwise, lens is good. But the Nikons, all Nikons, so far as I know, it's the opposite. So it's clockwise to lift off. So you put it on, counterclockwise, you push this down, anti-clockwise lift off. You also have a flash sync port here for a flash gun, so if that is your cup of tea. And then this front bit here, it's the same kind of ring system as the Minolta, and it controls the aperture, essentially. The other thing to note is there's a little window there, so when you're looking through the viewfinder, you can see what aperture you're shooting on, which is a nice little, like, professional thing, I believe. So let's talk about opening up the back, because this kind of is a pain. Normally, on every other camera, it's just lifting up the rewind lever, but on this one, there's a little plastic tab there. You have to pull this down, and then that allows you to lift it up. So essentially at this point, it is locked in. Move this, and then lift up. So in the back here, there's really not much to talk about. It does have a nice copal shutter instead of the cloth. So we're gonna use this test roll of film that I have, and we will load this up really quickly. Again, I think this is one of those that I've taken apart so many times, but I've never actually loaded film into it. But it's the same principle as every other camera. Yep, so it just feeds into a little slot over here. Make sure it sits well with the teeth of the sprocket. Shoot through a few of these. Okay, and again, just obviously you know this, but just a disclaimer, you're going to have the back closed on this while you're doing it. I'm not doing that because I just want to make sure that I don't rewind all the film into the canister, because I still need to use this roll. But say we're done shooting it, push the button in down here on the bottom, lift up the little tab, and just rewind. Pretty simple, and remember, you have to lift up on this to open it, and to be able to pull the little prong up so you can get your film out. Right here you'll note there's a little mark, and that is denoting where the film plane sits. So if you need to get like an accurate focus, you will bring it to that mark as opposed to like the end of the lens or to the lens mount itself. You bring it back to here. Really quickly, let's get into a couple of my issues with this camera, or this line of cameras. And it's one pretty major one. The battery compartment, it sits right here, and it's like right under the mirror box here. For whatever reason, it's very common with the Nikons that the batteries would go bad and corrode the wire, corrode the contact, which would disengage the wire. And then if you were to load new batteries into it, those batteries would short out on themselves, and then they would heat up, and that would melt the plastic, thus kind of rendering this camera useless. And again, you can fire it on bulb in 1/90th of a second, but like to kind of be hindered to those 2 speeds because of a battery issue, it's kind of problematic. This is a Nikon FE, pretty good camera, but there are just some disclaimers to note. So hope you enjoyed the walkthrough. See you on the next one.